Today we'll be doing a new chapter, Lost Spring. It's written by Annie's Jung. Before I proceed with the chapter, as usual, I would like to give you a short account on the writer Annie's Jung. Annie's Jung studied in India and the USA. She began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad. She has authored several books. Her book, Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood, focuses on children from deprived backgrounds. Let me repeat this. It focuses on children from deprived backgrounds. A short sketch on this chapter. These excerpts are taken from the author's book Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. This chapter is divided into two parts. It recounts the author's experience with poverty and traditions prevailing in some parts of India. I told you it's divided into two parts. So the first part describes the plight of the poor rag pickers of Simhapuri. The second part describes the miserable conditions of the bangle makers of Firozabad. Since the chapter is comparatively long, today I'm going to explain you the first part of the chapter. First part, that is it portrays the picture of rag pickers of Simhapuri. The first chapter deals with the poor rag pickers of Simhapuri, and today I'm going to explain only that part. Lost Spring. The title itself echoes the grim aspect of the poor children who live in the fringes of the society, or, in other words, the deprived, poverty stricken souls. The title of the chapter, Lost Spring, is a metaphor used for loss of childhood of millions of child laborers in India. Spring is a symbolic of joy, happiness, beauty, and hope. However, children of Simhapuri, children like Sahib, Alam, and Mukesh have no spring in their life because of the poverty they have been born into. Now, I'm going to give you the content of the part 1, that is rag pickers of Simhapuri. What is a rag picker? A rag picker is a person who picks rags and other refuse for a living. So these people are, very, very poor. They live a life of poverty. That is why the writer, that is Annie's Jung, who knows about all these, their condition, their plight, their prevailing condition, and then she feels that she should write about all these people. So here she begins this way. Every morning the author meets Sahib. Sahib is the main character of the first part, that is the rag picker. He and his friends are scrounging for gold. They are looking for gold in the garbage dumps of their neighborhood. Sahib and his family hail from Bangladesh. Actually, they don't belong to that place. They have come from Bangladesh, but they have left their home a long time ago. The reason why they left their home is storms washed away their fields and homes, reducing them to a state of abject poverty, which they left behind in the hope of finding a better life. That is why they came to this city looking for gold. The author says, Sahib, why he does rag picking. The author, when asked Sahib why he does rag picking and does not go to school, to this he replies that there is no school in his neighborhood. The author jokingly promises to open a school after a few days. Sahib asks if the author has opened the school. The author is very embarrassed of having made a promise that was not meant to be fulfilled. Nevertheless, she realizes that such promises are made to these children almost every day. When the author meets this boy called Sahib one day, he is looking for a gold in the garbage dumps, and she asks him why he is doing this. Why doesn't he go to school? To this, he says, like, if there is no school in the neighborhood, so he asked if this author is going to construct a school. To this, the author says that yeah, she is ready to open a school, but she doesn't keep up with her words. That is why she is embarrassed, because she, being an educated and she knows the condition of the poor people, she just made a promise which could not be fulfilled. That is why she was rather embarrassed when Sahib asked her if the school which was promised to him was opened. Then here we should also understand that promises are made, to these children. Regularly it has been made to these children, both national and international levels, to provide healthy lives, quality education, protection against abuse, exploitation and violence, and combating AIDS, and so on. But essentially it is felt that about 246 million children are still engaged in child labor, most of them working in hazardous condition. But the promises with these people, rich people, with the people, highly influential people made, are not met. It is just the promises are unkept. They make promises but never fulfill them. So in the text, the author asks Saib half jokingly if he will enroll in the school that she starts. Actually, the author was not at all serious about starting a school, but Saib thought that she had promised to start one. She did not keep her promise, so because of that, because it was not seriously made, so because of that she was quite embarrassed here. Now, after some months of knowing Sahib, the author asks him his full name. The author notices the irony in Sahib's name, Sahib-e-Alam, which means Lord of the Universe. She feels that Sahib would not believe what his name means. Unaware of the meaning of his name, Sahib roams with his gang, barefoot, on the streets. The author curiously asks why they don't wear slippers. One replies that his mother does not bring them down from the shelf. Another says he wants shoes. Moving across the country, the author has seen many children walking barefoot. One of the explanation is that it is a tradition and not lack of money, and is wonder if this is just an excuse or to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. So, did you understand this? The children of Simapuri are so poor that they don't even afford to buy a sleeper for themselves. They are seen barefooted, they are seen walking barefooted every day. And then when Arthur asks why they don't wear shoes, they give all vague information. They give all, they give offer various explanations. Some say that simply they're not caring to take the trouble of taking their sleepers down from the shelf to wear them, and not wearing barefoot footwear is a tradition. They call it a tradition, and so on. However, she feels that it is simply an excuse to hide a perpetual state of poverty. She feels that they are telling, they want to hide their perpetual state of poverty by, refusing to say that they don't directly own up. They don't directly say that they are not able to afford to buy. Instead, they make up all those stories. As many families cannot afford to buy footwear for their children, the reference to chappal is symbolic of any kind of footwear. which the rag pickers cannot afford. They cannot afford, be it a chapal or be it a shoe, anything they cannot afford. It is beyond their imagination. जुन चाहिँ ऱ्याग पिकर्सहरूलाई आफ्नो खानाको निम्ति कति परेशानी उठाउनु पर्छ उनीहरूलाई आफ्नो खानाको निम्ति पनि उनीहरूलाई पैसा छैन उनीहरूको लागि जुत्ता एउटा जुत्ता लाउनु अथवा चप्पल किन्नु चाहिँ ठुलो एकदमै ठुलो वाइल्डेस्ट ड्रिम कम ट्रु जस्तै हो त्यसैकारण उनीहरुकोमा जुत्ता छैन र जब नरेटरले उनीहरुलाई जुत्ता किन छैन भनेर सोध्दा उनीहरु दे डोन्ट दे आर नट फ्र्याङ्क इनफ दे डोन्ट ओन अप उनीहरुले गरिबताको कारणले हो भनेर उनीहरुले भन्नु सक्दैन तर दे गिभ भेरियस रिजन्स ओके एन्ड दोज रिजन्स नरेटर फिल्स दैट दे आर टेलिङ दे आर रेफरिङ टु हाइड देयर एब्जेक्ट poverty. This reminds author of the incident which took place in Udupi. Once, the author remembers a man from Udupi who, as a young boy, would pass a temple where his father was a priest and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, the author visits that town. Behind the temple, there was a house of a new priest, and she noticed the young boy of the priest who arrived panting. He was gasping. He came there. He was wearing shoes. The writer was reminded of the boy who prayed that he should never lose his shoes. See, now 30 years ago, when narrator had come to that place, there was a boy who prayed to God asking for a pair of shoes, and he had asked God not to lose them. He wanted the pair of shoes, okay, forever. So the goddess had granted his prayers. Now when the narrator comes here after so many years, she finds that almost all the young boys there have shoes now, which means they are not with the same condition. The condition of that place, Udupi, has changed a lot. Nowadays, their life standard or their condition of the life has been improved. Unlike the neighborhood of the earth, where this kind of, barefooted rag pickers are still seen. They are still around. So here what she wants to say is that rag pickers in Simhapuri have their condition have not changed any better. They are still living in the same poor pathetic condition, where the rag pickers are found to be roaming about without any shoes. The author's acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers takes her to Simhapuri. Simhapuri is a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Here, look at this place. Delhi is known to be a place inhabited by rich people. It is a place which have a better condition of living. Here lives the people with improvised standard of living. They have all the privileges here. But just look at this place called Simhapuri. It is in the periphery, yet it is so uncivilized. It is underprivileged. Here, the picture of this place gives you the images of poverty. It gives you the images of plight, poverty, the stingy drainage, and the houses out here are so poorly constructed. So here, look at the difference between these two places. This place, Simhapuri, actually has now become a home for 10,000 other shoeless rag pickers like Saib. They are all Bangladeshi refugee who came here back in 1971. They live in very poor conditions, in mud structured with roofs of tin. And the place has no running water facility and no drainage. The rag pickers have lived here for the past 30 years, some even more, without identity. They don't have any identity of their own. Yet they have, valid ration cards. Not having an identity does not bother them. They don't have their identity, but yet they are not bothered because they feel, at least here, at the end of the day, they don't sleep with empty stomachs. They prefer to live here rather than in the fields at home, which gave them no grain. Which means their condition in back in Bangladesh was horrible. It was more pathetic, more painful, more they had to struggle so much for food. But here, at least they don't have to sleep empty stomachs. They have something to feed. They have something to eat at least. So they who once lived in the beautiful land of green fields and rivers, these people had their own land. They owned their land once upon a time, but are now compelled to pitch their tents wherever they find food. But now it is so sad that these people will have to, fix a tent wherever they want, because in a new place, to inhabit it in a new place is very difficult. And for these people who are poor, they had nothing with them. For these people, even the life for these people becomes even more worrisome, or with more difficulties. Children are born in them and become partners in survival, which means children, they don't go to school. Children also, they contribute to their family members. They contribute, they earn for their living. Otherwise, like if they don't earn, if they don't contribute, they will not be able to support the family. They will starve and they will die out of hunger. But even the children are contributing, okay, for their livelihood. And survival in Simhapuri means nothing else but rag picking. Over the years, rag picking has become an art, actually. Garbage is gold to them, these rag pickers. Now, this is very important. Garbage is gold to these rag pickers. It is their only support and means of income. That is why it is like gold to these people. Saib tells the author that sometimes he finds a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. No, this is quite humorous here. For the children, rag picking has a different meaning. And he realizes that garbage holds a different meaning to both parents and children. For parents, it is the source of their livelihood, providing them with food and shelter. But for children, it is wrapped in wonder. Here, we are told, it is suggested that the people of Simhapuri look for items in the garbage which can be traded for money, meaning gold, as it helps them earn their daily bread and have a roof over their heads. For a child, garbage may mean something wrapped in wonder, whereas for the elders, it is a dream, it is a means of survival. If they don't do this, if they do, in case if they don't do this garbage picking, they would starve. So for them, it is a means of survival. But for the children, they always want, they are filled with wonder as to if they find a gold one day. They have hope that one day they'll find a gold in this garbage. So, garbage means gold to the poor rag pickers, because some of it can be sold for cash. Thus becomes a means of survival for the children of Simhapuri. And for their parents, it is providing them their daily bread and a roof over their heads. So that is the difference. Okay, that is the difference. That is what the elder feel about rag picking, and how the children of Simhapuri think a rag picking is for them. One morning, actually, winter morning, the author finds Saib outside the fenced gate of the neighborhood club. She sees him watching a game of tennis. Saib seems to be fascinated by the game. He tells the author that sometimes the guard, he allows him to go, and then he is allowed to ride the swing, it seems. The author notices that Saib is wearing tennis shoes. Saib tells her that someone gave them to him. On asking, he explains that it has been given to him by somebody. The fact that some rich boy discarded the shoes because there was a hole in it, in one of those, and he gave it to this boy, and this boy didn't bother. He didn't bother. This hole didn't bother him at all. For Sahib, who has walked his whole life barefoot, it is like a dream come true. Okay, so here this is this particular in this particular paragraph we see the images of poverty, very very sad. It's a very unfortunate that the people of Simhapuri are that the children of Simhapuri, who are supposed to be like usual children, who are happy in their own world, who have the privilege to play, who are free, who enjoy that free life, carefree life, who have the freedom to play, and they are not deprived, because they are not deprived. But unlike these other usual children, the children of Simhapuri are deprived of all these things. They don't have all these privilege. They don't even have shoes. Okay, they have to depend upon shoes given to discarded by somebody else's. So to these people, to go to the club and play is a big dream come true. Therefore it is very sad that these children are, there's a boundary in between. They are not allowed to cross the line, which means they live in the fringes of the society, and they are not allowed to step in or to cross the line. So this is the plight, of course, which Anis Jung wants to portray in this paragraph. One morning, the author sees Sahib on his way to the milk booth. He is carrying a steel canister. Okay, he's got a kettle in his hand. He informs the author that now he works at the tea stall and is paid 800 rupees. And he's also given, in addition to that, he also is given meals. So, but the narrator finds that Sahib is not at all happy. His face has lost his carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag. The bag was his, but the canister belongs to the owner of the tea stall. Sahib is no longer his own master. So one day, the narrator Anis Jung notices that Sahib has taken up a new job. Okay, he is performing a job at a tea stall, but he seems to be very unhappy because he was tied down by the work he had to do, which means now he was no more independent like he used to be. He seems to feel like the canister which he was carrying seemed to be heavier than the rack picking bag. Okay, which means that now he has lost his freedom. He has lost his independence. As a rack picker, he used to go. He was a master of his own. But now, because he's working for somebody, he's time bounded. He has to be there whenever his masters wants him, and that's why he looked very sad. He is not so happy like he used to be. This was the end of the first part of the story. Now I would like you all to read the story on your own. You have to read the story on your own and try to understand. If you have any difficulty, you can ask me. I'm going to give you the question answers and the word meaning of the difficult words in the story. Then I'll be giving you the question answers only at the end of, after I complete the second part. So wait for the second part. Till then, I want you to at least read the first part on your own. That's all. Bye bye.